All right, good evening, everyone. As you are starting to file in, welcome to the Colleges That Change Lives virtual days and this presentation on Clark University. Thank you all for joining us this evening. A few housekeeping announcements before we get started. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenters at any time. Also know that your camera and microphone are off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. This is just one of many different sessions that is happening as part of Colleges That Change Live Virtual Day. So be sure to sign up for additional sessions either later this evening or tomorrow as well. This presentation is being recorded and will be available within about a week at the same website where you initially registered. I'd now like to turn it over to our speakers and enjoy the presentation on Clark University.
Thank you, Owen. It's wonderful to be here with all of you tonight, even virtually. Hi, everyone. My name is Natasha Kathari. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an Assistant Director of Admissions at Clark University. I am joined here tonight by 3 students who I'm going to have introduce themselves in just a moment, as well as my colleague behind the scenes, Jared, who's going to be helping out with technology and our questions. So students, I'd love for you to introduce yourselves. Sarah, I'll start with you.
Sure. So my name is Sarah. I use she, her. I am a current Clark senior studying urban economic geography and urban studies from Connecticut. And outside of school, I'm also a stage manager for Clark Musical Theater.
Right, Morgan, you want to go next?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Morgan. I also use she, her pronouns, and I am also a senior, but I am studying English with a minor in community youth education studies, a concentration in comparative race and ethnic studies, and I'm also on the pre-law track. And outside of my academics, I lead a Bible study for InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. I'm also one of the chapter leaders there. I'm the editor of copy and content for the undergraduate research journal. And I'm also currently completing 2 independent research projects, one in the sociology department and one in the English department. And I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, greatest city in America. Woo.
And finally, Alex.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a 3rd senior as well. I'm a Spanish major with a law and society concentration as well as studying comparative literature. So essentially all I do is speak in front of crowds, no different today. Outside of the classroom, I'm the captain of the rugby team here, as well as being a participant on the mock trial team. And I emceed the gala event that we have, an international dance event that we have here on campus. So look forward to meeting you all.
Awesome. Thank you all for being here. I love that we have 3 seniors because I'm going to make all of you walk down memory lane with me. So Sarah and I are going to start out by talking to you a little bit about the academic experience at Clark University. Then I'll take you through a little bit of information on admissions and financial aid. And then Morgan and Alex will come back to tell you a little bit about student life at Clark. We will end with time to answer some of your questions. So let's get started. So before we get to academics, I do want to take a minute to add some context here. Clark University is in Worcester, Massachusetts, which is the 2nd largest city in New England. And Clark was founded in the late 1800s as a research university focused on psychology. Today we have 2,200 undergraduates and about 800 graduate students. And we still carry that research heritage forward with us. We are a research university, but we're also a liberal arts university. And both of those parts of our identity are really important to our curriculum, which we call LEEP. So LEEP stands for Liberal Education and Effective Practice. The first part of that, I think, is pretty straightforward, that it's kind of the liberal arts piece of this. So no matter what you study, we expect that you're going to explore a wide variety of disciplines during your time at the university. The effective practice piece is what I think really sets Clark apart. You're going to have an unusual level of access to different experiential opportunities during your time at the university. And we'll talk about some of the different ways that that can look in a little bit. So we're going to talk about 4 different aspects of the LEEP curriculum during today's presentation. But first, we're going to start, obviously, with the first year intensive. So when you're first coming to a college campus as a first year, there are a lot of transitions happening, of course. And I think that the first year intensive is kind of the bridge between your high school experience and your college experience. It's a small seminar style class that every Clark first year student will take. You can take it in about 36 different subjects, but what's really special about the FYI is that the person teaching that class becomes your first academic advisor at the university. And so the person who's helping you pick out classes, maybe decide on a major, is someone who's seeing you in class a couple of times a week, who's getting to know the way you learn, what your goals are, and so they're better able to help you reach your goals, and they're better able to connect you with experiences, opportunities, and people. So Sarah, like I said, taking you way down memory lane here, can you tell us a little bit about your FYI?
Sure. So I came into Clark completely undecided, had no idea what I wanted to do. So my summer advisor advised me to take a course that I was just interested in. She said, you don't have to take what you think is going to be your major forever, just a class name that sounds interesting. And first year intensives are known for having very interesting names. So mine is called How to Act Right on and Off Stage. So we met Friday mornings, 9 to 12, and the first half of the class was all about how to act right off stage. So we did meditation and stretching and sometimes Zumba and dance classes, but also talking about the transition into college because it is a class with only first year students. So it can be more of a vulnerable place to talk about how roommates are going and meal plans. And our professor took the time to give us that college 101. So we went over, where to find your grades, how to write a college essay, how to talk to a research librarian, the things that other students other than first years kind of just know and assume everybody knows. So it was good to have that place to learn all of that insider stuff. And then the second half of the class was how to act right on stage. So that was improv, sketch comedy, kind of like theater history 101. And then our final project was to write, direct, perform, and produce a small play inside a smaller group inside my 9-person class. So it was a great way to get to know other first-year students. And that professor became my advisor until I declared my second semester sophomore year. It was great to have somebody who knew me in the class, especially knew me at Fridays at 9 a.m. So that was Angry Sarah most of the time. And he was able to advise me on what kind of exploratory classes I should take after his.
That class sounds amazing, and I really want to do some Zumba right now. But I think that you touched on something really important, Sarah, and that's that you really do build an important relationship with that academic advisor, and they can kind of help you think about parts of yourself that maybe you hadn't considered before, whether that's off stage or on stage. But it's important to note that that's not the only person who's going to help you during your time at Clark University. As Sarah briefly mentioned, once you declare your major, you actually get to pick an academic advisor within that major. And in addition to that, we have extra advising available through our LEEP Student Success Network, which is basically an all-in-one stop for all different kinds of advising. Advising by major, advising on careers, study abroad advising, writing center, tutoring services, and about 10 other offices, all there ready to help you. And so as you move forward during your time at Clark University, you have basically an entire support system behind you, pushing you, supporting you, and empowering you to do some really exciting things. One of the things that that'll hopefully empower you to do is explore your different academic options. So as I mentioned earlier, Clark is a liberal arts university, and so we do require our students to explore a few different subjects beyond, just what they're majoring in. And we do that through what we call the Program of Liberal Studies, or PLS. This is a set of 9 different requirements, each fulfilled by one class. But the class that you take is entirely up to you. So for example, you can see under critical thinking courses that every student at Clark is required to do a formal analysis class. That can mean math, like calculus, statistics, algebra, but it could also mean symbolic logic, music theory, and about a dozen other classes that check that same box. So the PLS is a really great way of exploring a lot of different fields. It's also a great way of maybe helping you narrow down what you want to study if you come in undecided. So Sarah, can you tell us about maybe one of your PLS classes?
Sure. So as I mentioned in the last slide, I was one of those people who came in completely undecided. And as a side note, it's one of the reasons why I really liked Clark is because it was one of the few schools I was looking into that really loved that I was undecided and was ready to equip me with the knowledge I needed to decide which major, minor, all that stuff I wanted. So program of liberal studies was great to just get out of the way my first 2 years. If you do know a little bit about what you'd like to be doing, you can kind of spread these out throughout 4 years, but I got them all out of the way in the beginning to really understand what I wanted. So I could take a political science class, a sociology class, a psychology class, and a geography class all at the same time. And they're all kind of social sciencey, same kind of classroom experiences, but I could really understand more about those majors. And then also, I think the most important part was to hear from other people in those majors as well. So in my first geography class that I took, Environment and Society with Professor James McCarthy, I was with students that were seniors and students that were first years like me and kind of people in the middle. So it's interesting to have those smaller classroom discussions with people who had already gone through the entire geography curriculum, and just to hear what they already knew and understand. I was like, yeah, that's what I want to know too. Like, I want to be this smart. So that class is why I'm a geography major, as well as the professor James McCarthy is a huge reason why I'm a geography major, because he really sat down with me and talked about geography and what I could do as a major, which is what I did with a few of my PLS professors, just because they're there and they're resources.
Thanks for sharing, Sarah. I also want to talk about another type of class that we offer at Clark University called Problems of Practice, or POP classes. These are classes that are available in every single department at the university, and they're essentially classes that are super hands-on. So in an English class, you might write for the Worcester Telegram Gazette, the second largest newspaper in New England. In an environmental science class, you might do field work for the local government. You might do translation work for a local nonprofit through a French class. There are tons of really exciting options available here. But these classes are really key because, as I mentioned earlier, experiential learning is a huge part of Clark University. And this is just one way of starting to take your learning a little bit outside of the classroom. So Sarah, can you tell us about a POP class you've taken?
Sure. Well, my favorite POP class is also my favorite class that I've taken in general. So I'm excited to talk about it. But it's called Urban Ethnography. And ethnography in a geographical sense is really looking at research, but at a very micro level. So I was used to research thinking about, how can we get the biggest sample size? How can we see the most people? But this research was the opposite. It was more, how can we take individual stories and turn them into facts and history? So the point of the class was to really think about which voices aren't technically heard in your traditional research methods, what people and experiences kind of fall through the cracks, what non-traditional lifestyles are being forgotten about, especially in terms of city planning and community development, which are two things that I'm super interested in career-wise. So it was great to hear from, how you can successfully listen to experiences and take those into thought for practice and policies. So the POP class, the hands-on part, was really getting out into Worcester. And then one time it's Providence. We went to Providence for this class. It was a field trip. We took a bus. It was great. That doesn't matter. Also in Worcester, we would walk around downtown and look at the architecture and history. And our main project throughout the semester was to pick a place in Worcester to really study. So I took the Big Brothers Big Sisters program that happens in the elementary school down the street from Clark. So I spent about 30 hours that semester in the actual classroom observing the kids and their big brothers and big sisters, and then about 10 interviews from volunteers and managers and even some higher ups at the Big Brothers Big Sisters program. And then also I went to the library to look at the historical records of Big Brothers Big Sisters, how it started, why it is how it is today. So it was interesting to look at research in a different way and also write a huge research paper, 20 pages long, with everything I'd done over the semester that was outside, hands-on, meeting some kids in the neighborhood. So it was a really interesting class.
That sounds amazing. And I love how close Clark is to that building. Like, I think that it's so cool that a lot of students at Clark take advantage of the ability to kind of connect with the community. And so by the time you come to the end of your time at Clark, much like Sarah and Morgan and Alex are about to, not just yet, not yet, you have this really incredible narrative of all these different experiences that you've taken advantage of during your time at the university. And so one of the final things that we ask you to do is to take all of that and tie it up with a neat little bow through what we call the LEEP Capstone. This is essentially a major academic work that shows that you're ready to take what you've learned at Clark University off campus and into that really exciting, sometimes scary real world. So it can look really different depending on your major or majors, or depending on your own interests within those programs. Some students will take kind of a classic capstone where they will do a capstone class and then examine a problem through the lens of everything that they've learned at the university, or answer a question using some of the things that they've learned during their time at Clark. Others will, go in a completely different direction. I've seen art exhibitions, I've seen podcasts. One of the students who worked in our office who graduated last semester did a multi-episode sitcom arc. She actually wrote her own sitcom as part of her capstone. So there are lots of different options, but what unifies all capstones at Clark University is that they're really student driven. You're deciding what you wanted to study, what you want to learn about, or what you want to create. And you do have help. You do have an academic advisor who's there for you, but it's totally up to you what you want to do, which I think is really empowering. So Sarah, you are probably in the thick of this right now. How's that going?
Yeah, so since I have a major and a concentration, I need to do 2 capstones. So fortunately, I was able to do one in my junior year when I studied away in Boston. So study away is just like study abroad, except you don't leave the country. So last semester, I spent the entire semester at Boston, and it was an internship-based program. So 30 hours a week, I was at my internship at Leading Cities, which is a global nonprofit that works with connecting entrepreneurs that have really cool ideas and technology and solutions to make our cities more resilient and sustainable, connecting them with the actual city officials that can put these policies into place. So in that internship, I was working directly under the CEO of the company, learning how to actually run a business, which was cool. And kind of funny because I was one of his employees and he was teaching me all about how he basically managed me. But then also actually working with these entrepreneurs and learning about their solutions, from technology that can predict when water pipes are going to burst and which ones won't, and technologies that were putting all the city records into one application on your phone so you can always see which policies are there. So really learning about their experiences with cities and their frustrations with cities and how not resilient cities are, which was great to hear as somebody who's looking to be a city official. So that internship counted as my capstone, that experience for my urban studies concentration, which is typically some kind of internship outside of campus.
That is so cool. I don't think I knew that actually. What a hands-on way of, kind of wrapping up your time at Clark. So when you actually do end your time at Clark, you're going to be prepared for whatever comes next, whether that's graduate school, a job, what have you. And we have a lot of resources to help you with that. One that I really love to talk about is Clark Connect, which is part social media platform, think LinkedIn for Clarkies, but also it's an advising office as part of that LEEP Student Success Network I mentioned earlier. So it has a lot of people there who are able to help you with different aspects of the career and graduate program search. There are alumni who are available to network with you, faculty and staff who are there for you. They do networking events, both general ones and ones that are a little bit more specific to particular programs or career paths. So it's a really great resource. And I guess if you get one thing from this conversation about postgraduate life for Clarkies, it's that these numbers that you see on your screen, particularly that later number, 98% of our alumni are employed in school or in a voluntary service program within 6 months of graduation. Those things don't happen by accident. Everything that we've talked about up to this point, the personal attention that you get starting your first semester here, the fact that you are exploring lots of different ways of thinking during your time at Clark, the steps that you're taking outside of the classroom. These are all things that contribute to your success. And that's why our alumni have such exciting stories to share with us. There's one particularly special thing that happens at Clark for our, I guess, recent alumni, and that is something that we affectionately refer to as fifth year. So we have over a dozen different programs that are part of our accelerated bachelor's master's program. And what happens is essentially students choose one of these programs, they apply, although it's a very straightforward application. You need a certain GPA, you need certain classes under your belt, you need to sit down with an advisor. They begin doing graduate coursework during their final year at Clark, and then continue as full-time graduate students during one additional year. And so students are able to complete a master's program in just one extra year, hence the accelerated. But what's really special about this program is that we're one of only 2 institutions in the country where that fifth year is entirely tuition free. Don't pay a dime of tuition. There is not a huge barrier to entry here either. This is not, you know, a handful of your classmates who get to take advantage of fifth year. As you can see, 1 in 3 Clark alumni choose to stay on for this accelerated master's program. So it's definitely a great way to add more value to your education. So Sarah, you are doing fifth year. Yay, tell us about that.
A very exciting experience. I think the coolest part is it's the only grad program I've been exposed to since I was a first year. So I went into some meetings my first year with graduate advisors in these programs to kind of see which one would be most beneficial to me and how I could kind of build to it. And then you do apply junior year, so you can start taking classes your senior year. So right now I am in the first grad course for the community development and planning fifth year. So it's very accessible. As Natasha said, the application was very easy. It's mostly based on GPA. So most of the programs are looking for a 3.4, as well as just 2 simple essays. The first one was, why are you doing this program? And how are you going to do this program? Since it is a bit much to start graduate classes at the same time as you're finishing your undergraduate degree. So just want to make sure that you're equipped for both of those questions.
Well, good luck with that. That sounds like a busy first semester senior year that you're having then. Cool. So now, before I have Morgan and Alex come back on to talk to you about student life at Clark University, we're going to talk a little bit about the admissions process here. But I do want to acknowledge that this is a really weird year in which to be thinking about college, right? We have a global pandemic happening, I think a growing global awareness of racial injustice, murder hornets. There's a lot going on in the world right now. And so first of all, thank you for taking the time to learn about Clark University, but also know that those of us who work in college admissions are aware of what's happening in the world, aware of the broader context. So if your grades look different, if your activities got canceled, we get it. You're doing your best, and so are we. So know that at Clark, we pride ourselves on a really holistic admissions process, even in years that aren't 2020. And so certainly in a year like this, we are going to try our very best to get to know your story through the admissions process. So what exactly are we looking for? We want Clarkies who are really invested in their education, people who take ownership of their learning, and also who are planning on being engaged within the Clark community, maybe people who are currently engaged in their community. And we have a lot of clues to help us as we're looking for this information all over your application. So let's talk about what that looks like. If you are applying as a first year student, you can see that we have 4 different deadlines. We are a common application school, and for this year, we've actually waived our application fee. So it is free to apply to Clark University. If you are a transfer student, admissions are rolling. So whenever you submit your application for the following semester, you will typically hear back in about 3 weeks. That application is also free. Regardless of how you're applying, we need an application from you, we need letters of recommendation, and we need transcripts. If you're applying as a first year student, of course, that means high school transcripts. If you're applying as a transfer student, we do also need your college transcripts. Regardless of how you're applying to Clark University, we highly recommend that you take advantage of an admissions interview. They are optional, but they're super casual, like 20 to 30 minutes long. They're frankly a lot of fun, if you ask me, and they're a great way to strengthen your application and give us a little bit more of your story beyond just the numbers. One thing that you'll notice that we don't require at Clark is standardized tests. We've actually been test optional since 2012, both for admissions and scholarships. So if you're happy with those test scores, you want us to see them, feel free to submit them and we will consider them, but they're a very small component of what we're looking at. If you're not happy with those scores, if COVID messed with your testing plans, if you're just sick and tired of taking standardized tests, don't submit them. You're still going to be competitive for admissions. You're still going to be competitive for scholarships. All right. So let's talk about financial aid and scholarships really quickly. When it comes to merit-based aid, also known as scholarships, you're actually considered for these automatically. You don't have to lift a finger beyond submitting your application, whether you're a first-year student or a transfer student. And we're using the same sort of holistic criteria that we use when we're reviewing your application for acceptance. So, we're not just looking at your GPA, we're also looking at things like what classes have you taken? What are your teachers saying about you? What does your writing look like? What are you involved in? Lots and lots of different aspects of who you are. We do have some additional scholarships that require extra steps. If you are interested in those, you can indicate that on the application or by talking with your admissions counselor. And then if you're applying for need-based financial aid, know that 85% of our students are receiving some type of aid. If you are an American citizen or permanent resident, we require you to submit both the FAFSA and the CSS profile by the deadlines for the application of, the timeline of your choosing. If you are not a citizen or a permanent resident, we just require the CSS profile if you're applying for need-based financial aid. So be sure to get those documents in on time. All right, so at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Morgan and Alex to tell us a little bit about life at Clark University as a student.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm back. We're going to start us off talking about student life. So first of all, really key to kind of life at Clark in general, both academically and like outside of our academics, is the fact that we're located in Worcester, which is the second largest city in New England. So as you probably got from kind of hearing some of Sarah's stories, there are a lot of really cool, professional opportunities in Worcester, lots of places to intern, volunteer, do all of those cool, hands-on things. For me personally, as a pre-law student, being in Worcester has been really great because there are no law schools in the city of Worcester. Even though there are 11 other undergraduate colleges, there are no law schools, which means I've gotten really cool internship opportunities at the district attorney's office and some other places that otherwise maybe would have gone to law students. So yeah, it's been really great in terms of boosting the resume, but we also do have fun at Clark, I promise. And Worcester is a really great city to have fun. We have a ridiculous number of restaurants in basically every kind of cuisine that you could think of. I believe the statistic is 1 in 5 people in Worcester were not originally from the US, which means there are a lot of really cool different kinds of foods from different parts of the world that I really enjoyed. Worcester also has a lot of green space for a city of its size. I think we have about 60 parks within city limits, as well as a lot of hiking trails right around the city. So I really enjoyed that as well, kind of getting the best of both worlds of fun city life, art life, food scene, but also being able to get a break and get outside every now and then. Additionally, student clubs and organizations are kind of the backbone of life on campus. We don't have any Greek life by choice. We've chosen not to make that a part of our campus life. So our student clubs and orgs really make up kind of the backbone of our social scene. We have over 130 of them, so I can almost guarantee you that you can find something that really interests you. We have pretty common clubs different cultural groups, Model United Nations, all of that good stuff. But we also have some fun, kind of weird ones. We have a beekeeping club. The club pictured on the screen is called the Makerspace, where they use 3D printers and other really cool technology to do like, I think like high-tech crafting. I don't know. Sheila, who's pictured in this picture, was always like showing me cool things she was making when she worked in admissions. And it's also really, really easy to start your own club if you don't have the organization that we're looking for.
All right, study abroad and away. So in terms of giving shout outs to the people in the picture, I know this person as well. Her name is Lila. And as soon as she came back from her abroad program, I think that it's all that she talked about for the next semester. So for context, people seem to like their experiences. But Sarah, I think, touched on this a little bit already. The difference between study abroad and away is that abroad is overseas. You go to a different country, experience a new country, and, you know, all of what they have to offer. But the away programs are within the United States. It's a domestic program. And we have over 50 approved programs all over the world in 30 different countries. I think there may be more than 30 nowadays. And students also can go on unapproved programs if they go through a vetting process with the Study Abroad and Away office. So it's just sort of a personalized experience if none of the ones speak to you that we already have pre-approved. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't go on a separate program. Financial aid packages will carry over for approved programs for domestic students, but will not for non-Clark programs. So the pre-approved ones, you still get your financial aid, otherwise a little dicier. And roughly 1/3 of Clark students, including Lila, do choose to study abroad during their time at Clark. Most students usually go during their junior year. And although I'm a Spanish major and a senior, because of coronavirus, I did not get to go abroad. So unfortunately, I can't share my own experiences. But again, knowing Lila, I can tell you for certain that Spanish students definitely like to study abroad. And I know plenty of other students who didn't study language who study abroad and love the experience as well. Anything from language-based to London School of Economics. And then athletics. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm the captain of the rugby team here, and that's a club team that we have at Clark, but we do have 17 varsity teams. There are 7 men's and 10 women's, and we compete in the NUMAC conference, the New England Women's and Men's Athletic Conference. I'm gonna say NUMAC though from here on out because it's a bit of a mouthful to say the whole thing. 16% of students, of undergraduate students, participate in varsity athletics, but 60 around participate in athletics as a whole. So as I mentioned earlier, we do have club sports as well as intramural sports. My experience with intramural sports is not as positive because my basketball team last semester went 0-12. So I'm not going to talk about that any longer, but the intramural sports here are very properly run, very good time. It's within the school. So intramural sports are Clarkies versus Clarkies, whereas club sports are Clark versus other schools, typically within the same conference, although I do know our club basketball team faced the Boston College club basketball team last year, and it went as you would expect it went. And as we had said earlier, Greek life does not exist on Clark's campus. So a lot of the athletic events that we have here, basketball games, soccer games, do account for some of the social atmosphere and gives us sort of events to go to. But obviously, like we said before, clubs and organizations hold their own groups and other improv groups and a lot of events to go to. So sports are a very big part of Clark, but I definitely would say that they're not the number one sort of social aspect.
All right, thank you all for sharing a little bit about the Clark experience. I really appreciate it. And now we are going to take a little bit of time to answer questions from the audience. This is my favorite part. So we're going to start with a question from Lucas. What do you think was the main reason why Clark made the CTCL list? In my opinion, CTCL schools are a wonderful consortium of schools that are known for providing transformative educational experiences. So for those of you who aren't as familiar with CTCL just yet, that's kind of the common thread. At Clark, I would say that it's a combination of a community that truly pushes you, changes you for the better, and a curriculum that pushes you to go beyond the classroom with your learning. Sarah, Morgan, Alex, anything to add?
I have an answer for this one. It might be a little corny, and I apologize in advance if it sounds salesy. I promise I get no commission if any of you come here, but this is my true experience. So Clark actually somewhat did change my life as a person. In high school, I was very much athletically oriented. All I did was play rugby and then go to sleep. And my parents were like, Alex, you need to get out and do more things. And I was like, oh, what do they know? They're just my parents. Sorry, parents, if there anyone here. Obviously, that's not how we feel about you. But I got to Clark. And the atmosphere of Clark University is truly unique. And I say that because I come from a very large high school. It's a very competitive atmosphere, very, again, athletically oriented. But I came to Clark and I immediately was met with this impression of it's okay to try new things. So I mentioned that I emceed that gala event, and that was my first year that I was here. And that was never something that high school Alex would have even considered doing. So Gala is an international dance event that we host every year, and it's most of the school attends. It's, I think, the most highly attended event on the campus. And different groups come and work the entire year to choreograph a dance and represent their own nationalities and oftentimes other nationalities. And it's a very fun experience, but I was the one who hosted that event. I was one of the MCs. So I was up there on stage in front of the whole school, and myself in high school would have thought that that was probably the worst experience that could have happened to me by accident or on purpose. And there I was, sort of feeling as though I was in my element. So that's something that I know would not have happened to me had I not gone to Clark, because of the collaborative nature of Clark, because of people pushing you to do things that you wouldn't be comfortable doing otherwise, and because it makes it very much okay to try new things. So in terms of how it would change lives, I'd say that it genuinely does. And I hope that doesn't sound too corny, because it is my real experience.
That doesn't sound corny at all. That sounds amazing, Alex. I still probably would be a little bit nervous about getting in front of that many people and emceeing. So to think about you doing that, during your first year here, that's incredible. And I'm sure that you've grown in so many other ways as well. That's just one really wonderful example. So next we have a question all the way from Indonesia. We have a student who's interested in the 3-2 engineering program and wants to hear more about that. I can take that really quickly. So we have a 3-2 agreement with Columbia University. Students who are interested in engineering at Clark do 3 years of their undergrad at Clark University, majoring in something related to the type of engineering that they'd like to do, and then spend an additional 2 years at Columbia University completing their engineering degree. At the end of those 5 years, they graduate with 2 bachelor's degrees, and it's a great opportunity for students who really, really love engineering, but also don't want to sacrifice the excitement and the value of a liberal arts education. Next, we have a question about how students can prepare for an interview. Sarah, I'm going to give this to you, but first I do want to mention we don't expect you to prepare. Our interviews are non-evaluative, so that means we aren't trying to judge you. We aren't, taking notes to grade you or anything. We really do just want to get to know you through that process. So yeah, Sarah, I know that you do a lot of interviews. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, the good thing is you're looking at 3 people who could possibly be your interviewer. So people like Sarah, Morgan, and Alex, that we're kind of nice. So it's not an extremely scary situation. They're actually one of my favorite parts of the job, just because I love talking to high schoolers that are interested in Clark and just seeing how awesome they are. So it is really just a great conversation to see where you have been, so what you've been up to in your high school career, either inside of school or outside of school. And also on that point, Natasha mentioned that we are very COVID sensitive to how plans could have changed as well. And then also what you're looking to do in the future. So really making sure that Clark is the right school for you, or can be the right school, and just understanding what you'd like out of a college and how we could help you understand more of what you might really enjoy out of a college and where you think would be a good environment for you to not only learn but also live, is a very exciting part of the interview, because after I ask all my questions about what you've been up to and what you'd like to be doing, it's also a great opportunity to talk to one of us as Clark students and get to know how our experiences have been more one-on-one.
See, not so scary after all, right? Interviews are great. This next question is a really fun one, and Morgan, I'm going to give it to you. What's your favorite tradition at Clark?
I'm like a tradition person, so I'm very excited about this question. My probably would actually be International Gala, which I believe Alex has already mentioned, the big international dance festival put on by the ISA every year. I'm still really sad that my roommates and I did not get to perform in Egypt last year because the event got canceled due to COVID. But that's one of my favorites. I think the other one, I'm like a big Thanksgiving person. It's my favorite holiday. Stuffing is my jam. I love it. And every year, the Thursday before we go home for Thanksgiving break, the cafeteria holds like Calfsgiving is what it's affectionately known as, a big cafeteria Thanksgiving. And I believe you can get in like with your Clark ID regardless of whether or not you're on the meal plan. I definitely don't tell dining services, definitely have gotten in without having to swipe my card before. So it's just kind of like everyone from Clark is like in the caf. It's like a big family dinner. So that would probably be my other favorite tradition.
Thank you for sharing, Morgan. Capstone sounds like a good time for me to visit campus. Wow, I want to do that. So next we have a question about, let's see, PLS requirements. Can I take more than one PLS, or can I choose, do I have to just choose one of each type? So you can take more than one class in each PLS requirement. So for example, I mentioned formal analysis earlier. You might take a math class and a symbolic logic class. One, you are absolutely not required to do that, but two, since there are so many PLS classes or so many classes at Clark that fulfill PLS requirements, it is actually probable that during your time at Clark, you're going to take multiple classes that could technically check that same box. Not required to, but you can. And then we also have a question about clarifying the difference between early decision 1, early action, early decision 2, and regular decision. This doesn't just apply to Clark University, this applies to many American colleges and universities, but early decision 1 and 2, wherever you see that, are binding. This means this institution is your first choice, and if you're accepted, you're going to plan on going there. You'll withdraw your applications to other schools. Early action and regular decision both allow you to keep your options open if you're applying as a first year until the end of your senior year. So for early action, you're applying a little bit earlier. Regular decision, you're not. I always advocate, no matter which schools you're looking at, for applying early action, simply because it means you don't have to worry about that application over winter break. Okay. So next question, let's see, we have some great ones here. This one goes to Alex. Someone wants some insight into Clark's comparative literature program.
I was actually just replying to this one in the comments here, so that times out perfectly. So the technical definition for the program is that they want you to learn how to challenge and critique social constructions through robust literary analysis. My advisor is the head of the program, so I have this sort of memorized here, and it talks about the concept of nationalism and analyzes specific texts and making text-to-world connections as well as text-to-text connections. So there's a lot of buzzwords. Essentially, it's a lot of very deep analysis of certain pieces of literature and how you can tie them to today and sort of grow from them and learn from history. Because I'm not a very big into history type of person, but this is how I get my fix of the past and shaping the future. For me, I'm taking it as a minor, so I get a lot of it through my Spanish courses, because a lot of my Spanish courses are very literature-based and history-based and culture-based. But the way the program operates is very much as the name implies, but it's a lot more in-depth than just looking at two pieces of literature and saying what's similar between them.
Great, thanks, Alex. So now we have a question for maybe students who don't know exactly what they want to do when they get to Clark. So we have a student who wants to know more about the support available for undecided students to select a major and career path, specifically for students who may need additional guidance or support system, and who find the thought of selecting a major and career daunting or terrifying. So I think a couple of us have been there before. Who wants to talk about that?
I can go. Because I think I understand wholeheartedly, and it's like another round of that now. I'm supposed to be a senior. That's that career part that the whole time I was just like, oh, this will matter later, right? I think a huge part of the academic support, especially early on, is through professors and the Academic Advising Center at Clark. So we do have an Academic Advising Center, which I've used to help declare majors, minors, concentrations. They have workers there who just have a great great amount of knowledge about all of the programs at Clark. So even if you go in there like, hey, these are some things that I'm kind of interested in, I'm wondering how that could become a major, they can really coach you through that and put you on the next steps. But a huge part of how I decided which major I wanted, as somebody who's just like, yeah, I love social science, but some of these things are very similar. Like, what is the real difference between sociology and geography? Not a lot, not a lot. So I did was go into professor office hours, and even professors that I didn't have, that I just saw in the directory as professors who are in this field, and just said, hey, like, what can I do with this degree? What kind of classes would I be taking? And really have more one-on-one conversations that were very personal to my experiences, and more than you can get out of like a Clark website. So that was a huge part of how I felt more secure in my majors, because I felt like I knew it was coming in the next few years and what I can get out of it at the end. So my panic now as a senior can be a little bit less than it might have been before.
All right, so we are coming to the end of our time for this presentation. You see that we do still have a lot of questions left, so I think we're going to make time for just one more. For those of you whose questions didn't get answered or who think of questions later, please do feel free to email us at admissions@clarku.edu. We'd love to hear from you, whether you have a question or just want to say hello. So this is the final question, which I actually see a few different times in the Q&A section. For all three of you, Sarah, Morgan, and Alex, why did you choose Clark over other schools? I will ask that you keep your responses fairly brief, just to keep us on time, but go for it.
All right, I can start off here because I think the keep your responses brief might have been directed at me because I've been rambling a bit here. So the reason I chose Clark is, one, my sister said that I might like Clark, so immediately I had some bias because my family and I are very close. But second, that piece of that culture that is very much portrayed in all of the Clark information sessions and all of the Clark, oops, sorry, I don't know if you heard a background noise there. My roommates are playing Wii Sports very intently with each other. But the atmosphere that's created and that you hear is created, the collaborative nature, is very true to what Clark is. And I felt that in all of the presentations that I went to, and I felt that in all of the people that I talked to, all the students that I talked to, all the admissions officers that I talked to. So I would say that the reason I went there is just, it's that atmosphere. It's the collaborative nature of the school. It's the people want people to succeed, and people don't want to put themselves in front of other people's success. So it's definitely nice to be in a very helpful environment.
I can't say why Clark was my favorite school applying, because that's not a short answer, but I'll say why I officially came here is because, one, the financial aid worked out, which no one will pretend like that's not a big deal, and two, the fact that I mentioned before about how Clark was the only school I applied to that did not make me put a major in my application coming into Clark or decide a major before I entered the school, which I thought was respect.
So for me, I mean, Clark checked off all of my boxes. I wanted like small liberal arts school in New England that was also urban, but that also had like a real campus. And there are surprisingly few schools that like fit that very specific criteria. But for me, what it came down to, and I will try to keep this brief, is I had a very like demoralizing college admissions process. I came from a competitive high school where I was told like Ivy League or die. Didn't get into the Ivy Leagues, ate an entire cheesecake, cried for a day, was very sad and let down, and just felt like a total failure. And I think what stood out to me about Clark is that more than any other school, they really made like a genuine effort to get to know me beyond just like my test scores. And that just, it meant the world to me. Like sad little senior Morgan, like really just needed to be loved and wanted by a school. And Clark gave me that. And I think that's really sealed the deal for me.
Well, thank you all for sharing that. Thank you to those of you who have joined us today to learn a little bit more about Clark University. We are so glad to be able to talk to you. We're so grateful to be part of Colleges That Change Lives. If you entered a question earlier and we didn't get to it, we will be following up by email. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to Owen. Have a good night.
Great. Thank you so much to all of our presenters. As soon as this webinar ends, there will be a link to a quick 4-question survey. We would appreciate any feedback that you have. Also, this is just one of many sessions being hosted today and tomorrow, so please feel free to sign up for additional. And if you'd like a recording of this session, it will not be emailed to you, but it will be posted on the same website where you initially submitted your registration. So certainly feel free to check out any of those. Thanks again, and have a great evening.